Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I saw reports over the weekend. Democrats going to lose the House to Republicans. The left's, too woke, too far, Democratic agenda, too extreme. You see the messaging out there, and my mind is in this place where you go, hold on a second. The Build Back Better plan is too extreme. Getting help for working families, building affordable housing, ensuring families get child care. This is extreme. Health care, good jobs, ensuring that, I know we're not talking about Granny getting, some chompers and some hearing aids and some glasses again. I know that's completely off the table, but that's extreme in this day and age. This is what passes for extreme today. I mean, seriously, when the corporate-controlled mainstream media is fixated on how far the Democrats have gone to the left, how extreme, how woke they are, because, they want equality and fairness and equal opportunity and decency. Heaven forbid. That life, liberty, pursuit of happiness thing. That's written somewhere. It's got to be. I've heard it before. That's too extreme. Way too extreme, folks. It's just too much to ask for. Too much to ask that we help working families get ahead. Too much to ask for that we make things work. Too much to ask for. Too much to ask for to make workers' lives better. I get it. Too much, too far, too extreme. And yet, the Republicans who are getting almost no attention whatsoever. And this is the part that's really frustrating, because every day I wake up and all I keep seeing is hammered. Joe Biden's, getting accused of this, and, the Democrats are getting hammered with this because, woke. And yet you look at the Republican agenda, of which they actually kind of have one a little bit. Rick Scott came out with his. And the agenda calls for taxing almost half of the country. Remember Mitt Romney and the 47% of people who don't pay taxes? Well, Rick Scott's going to fix that. He's going to make those people, they're going to have some skin in the game. That's right, skin in the game. So about 40% of the country are going to have to chip in about $1,000 a year extra that they don't have. Now understand, these are people who would love to pay federal taxes. They would love to pay federal taxes. The reason they don't is they don't make enough money. So if they got a raise and they could, I'm sure they would love to chip in. Absolutely. Because the reason we've got so many poor people is they don't make enough money. Because wages are too low. Because minimum wage is too low. Employers are, screwing them. Why? Because rich people can. Pretty simple. But here's the thing. We're not hearing much about it. Not hearing much at all. In fact, Rick Scott's plan, really extreme. In fact, his plan would eliminate all federal legislation over 5 years, which means every 5 years you'd have to go back and reenact everything. So think Social Security. Hey, Granny, in 5 years, you want to roll the dice? You want to roll the dice that the Republicans who hate working people are going to reenact Social Security? You want to roll the dice on that? Hey, how about Medicare? You want to roll the dice that Republicans are going to keep Medicare so that you maybe get to keep your health care in old age? You want to roll the dice on that? How about poor people? How about that Medicaid that's helped a good portion of the country with a little bit of health care? Evidently half of the children born in this country are born with Medicaid. The people who tell us that they're the family values party, they love the children. You want to really roll the dice with the party of family values? This gets no attention. Now remember, these are the people. These are the people who keep telling us. They're the party of family values. They're the party of smaller, less intrusive government. They're the party of lower taxes. They're the party of strong national defense. Yet a good number of them seem to be carrying the water for Vlad. Seem to be spewing the Russian propaganda. And it seems that, those core tenets they used to tell us they believed in, that we know they never did. Well, they've taken to a whole new level. But hey, keep thinking Democrats are too extreme. Wanting that health care and wanting good jobs for workers and wanting children to get health care and child care and a good education. Keep thinking that is extreme. And never mind the fact that Republican legislators across this country are going at full tilt boogie to make abortion illegal everywhere. And not just illegal, punishable with all kinds of draconian, who knows what. They're dreaming up new stuff every day. I mean, Texas has a bounty hunter law. They're literally going to set up little brown shirts, going to be sifting through women's garbage. Because, hey, there's money to be had. I can see it now. TLC will have a reality show. Dog the Bounty Hunter will be diving into dumpsters, going through women's trash. To make sure that, you better not have had a miscarriage, or you could go on trial. Now remember, this is the party of family values. Less intrusive government. Get government out of my lives, they tell you. Except into your bedrooms. Except into your most private moments, into your most difficult decisions. You look at Texas with this transgender nonsense. Mind-blowing. Now look, I'll be the first to tell you, these are very difficult situations. Abortion, the transgender issue, I don't have the answers. And you know who else doesn't? Government. Nor should they. I'm somebody who believes government should be able to solve problems because I believe government is us, we the people coming together to solve the problems that we individually cannot solve. But I'll tell you what government should not be doing: having anything to do with a woman's reproductive rights, have anything to do with a family's choices and decisions when it comes to issues like anything having to do with transgender, anything. And I'll be the first to tell you, I know nothing about it. Nothing. It's not my issue, has never been my issue. But again, a Republican governor in Texas is the last person who should have a say in deciding how a family deals with a very difficult, very sensitive, very personal decision. And a bunch of old white guys, most certainly not the people I want making those choices, especially the ones who tell me that they're, how religious they are. Save your religiosity. Save your pompous preaching. Save your nonsense. Look in the mirror, give it to yourself. You need it more than anyone. The reality is, don't worry about me. Don't worry about anyone else. Worry about yourself. Because here's the thing. Republicans are the extremists here. Republicans hate working people. Because I'll tell you one thing. One thing's always universal here. The wealthy, they're going to get what they want. If abortion is illegal and we've got Dog the Bounty Hunter sniffing down every trash can in Dallas and Houston, I guarantee you the wealthy in those cities, they're going to get what they want without the fear of any repercussion. I guarantee you if they have a transgender child, that child is going to be able to do whatever they need and want it to be able to do, because the wealthy never never have to worry about consequences like this. It's just the working class and the poor. So let's be very clear about this. The Republicans do the bidding of the wealthy, and they both hate the workers. They both hate working people. It is that simple. And what's frightening is at how fast Republicans are moving on legislation to not just outlaw abortion, but to make it criminal and to lock people up. And this one in Texas. Now again, Texas seems to be ground zero. Got the dog to bounty, the bounty hunter law. This one, predictable. Look, we're going to go into some really ugly places. I've said eventually, this isn't just about abortion. You understand, this is about the right to privacy. This is about so much more than just abortion. This is about contraception. This is about the right to choose how many children, or if you have children. This is about so much more. This is about control of one's destiny. This is about privacy from government intruding in your life. This is so much more. Self-determination. But here in Texas, State Representative Brian Slayton, male. No exceptions for rape and incest. He has put forth a piece of legislation to abolish and criminalize all abortions. And that would carry a charge of up to and including the death penalty. This isn't the first time he's put this forth. No, this has been out there before. This is not new. They've done this before. Only now there's actually a chance this could pass. Then you go, oh no, that couldn't possibly happen. That was the same thing they said about the bounty hunter thing. Now in Missouri, they've got a law that they're working on right now that would chase women across state lines. Well, okay, it's illegal in Missouri. Just go across the state line. Go get it somewhere else. Oh, no. We're going to have bounty hunters chase you across state lines. How is this not more extreme? How is this not worse? And here's the simple thing. If you're against abortion, don't have one. Pretty simple. It's the same thing about gay marriage. If you're against gay marriage, pretty simple. Don't do it. I wouldn't marry a man. If a guy came up and said, hey, would you marry me? I go, no, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for the offer. Thanks for not hitting me in the head. Have a nice day. But it shouldn't be illegal. And people should mind their own business. But somehow all of this stuff is not extreme, according to our mainstream corporate-controlled media. No, health care for kids, good jobs for workers, increased wages. Somehow that stuff just too far. It's gone too far, Rick. It's crazy, I tell you. And I'm hoping working people wake up this election cycle, wake up to the reality that we're getting screwed, and that we get out in mass numbers and we vote. We vote early. We get out there and we make sure our voices are heard, and we get our friends and our neighbors and everybody else to the polls. This time is that important. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs. in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I know. Don't worry, Rick. Don't worry. We're going to vote. We're going to throw the bums out. We're going to get them out. We're going to throw the bums out. Don't worry about it. We're going to go to the polls on Election Day in November, and we're going to toss them out. And the thing is, you know, I used to believe that. I used to. But if you look at what's going on in Texas right now, if you look at how many early ballot requests are being rejected, if you look at the things that are happening in states across this country, you look at the massive number of restrictions that are put into place. You know why Trump and the Republicans are so angry about the 2020 election still? Because they really thought they had it rigged. They really thought they had done enough to rig the 2020 election, that it wouldn't matter. They thought they had done enough purging. They thought they had the Kobach Commission to do enough of their gamesmanship, to throw enough people off the voting rolls, that there's just no way enough people would go out and throw Donald Trump out. And as Billy Barr said, Trump was the weak sister in Wisconsin. You know, Trump got 50,000 less votes than Republicans got, which means that Republicans made the choice to throw him out. So they did enough to rig it. It's just that Republican voters said, you're too bad. And the thing is they really believed they had enough to rig the thing. Now they're going to this time around. They underestimated their own people. They're going to finish it off. Which is why people have to be much, much more diligent this time around. But, you know, I look at, think about Rick Scott's plan. We're going to eliminate all federal legislation every 5 years. Can you imagine that system and the lobbying that would go into that? There was a Washington Post story over the weekend that caught my attention. 2021 was a record-breaking year for lobbyists. $3.7 billion were spent in lobbyists. 3,700 new companies and organizations hired lobbyists in 2021. Now, look, there's a lot of money. You had the rescue plan, $1.9 trillion. You had the infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion. There's a lot of money to lobby over. But the thing that gets me is it's not, they're not even spending a lot. Corporate America is at the trough with their nose all the way deep in. The Chamber of Commerce spent over $66 million. National Association of Realtors, they wanted theirs. They've got $44 million. Big Pharma, $30 million. The Business Roundtable, $29 million. Blue Cross Blue Shield, $25 million. American Hospital Association, $25 million. Meta, $20 million. American Medical Association, $19 million. Amazon, $19 million. American Chemical Council, $16 million. Go down the list. All of these corporate interests, all of these corporate associations just spending money lobbying for what? Well, because they want more for them. You know who doesn't have a lobbyist? You, me, working people. Which is why legislation never goes our way. And you look at the fact that Rick Scott, without any worry, without any concern, is willing to raise taxes on 50% of the country. Without concern. But he's willing to cut taxes. He's going to cut taxes because he's going to cut taxes. You know on who? The 1%. Because that's who matters. That's who's footing the bill. That's who pays the bill. And at the end of the day, until we wake up to the reality that this isn't as much as right against left as we're led to believe, it's really those folks at the top, the people sitting in the corporate boardrooms against the rest of us. the ones who can say, hey, I can pay half the working class to murder the other half, the sooner we wake up to that reality, the sooner we're going to maybe have a shot at getting some things that we need to get done. Because I go back to it. Think about the framing that they've thrown at us. Think about it for a second. Health care for kids, child care, some help for seniors to stay in their homes a little bit longer before you have to put them in a nursing home, affordable housing, public transit. That's extreme. But all of the attacks on abortion, all of the attacks on families with transgender kids, all of the insanity over that theory about race that's critical. Oh my God, the sky is falling. In fact, Trump over the weekend said, you gotta, what was it? You gotta you put your life on the line or whatever nonsense he was throwing out there. That this is the issue to die on? Really? While people are literally dying in Ukraine for freedom, the theory about race that's critical is the issue that Republicans are literally going to die on? And the answer is yes, because it is that important to them. Because they are that simplistic. That's the message machinery. Because they know that gets people, that's the outrage candy. That's the chaos merchants throwing stuff out there to keep us divided so that they can keep robbing us blind. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the grift. It's all about stealing from us. Because again, rule number one, Republicans hate working people. That never will change. And it comes out in their legislation. And look, I don't like saying that. I wish there were a movement of Republicans that say, no, we're going to stand up and fight for working people. We're going to fight for better health care. But you got Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, who came out and said, we're going to repeal the Affordable Care Act with nothing in its replacement. At least Trump laughingly said he had a replacement plan. And we know what his replacement plan was. It was a ream of unopened paper from Staples, all blank pages. We know there was nothing there. But at least I've got something. At least he spent the 59 cents and bought the packet of paper. Even if he did send John Barron to get it. But we're in one of these moments. And the sooner that we come together and put down this division, the more hope maybe we've got. And this is where I'm frustrated in this moment, because we're focused on what's being thrown at us, what's being spoon-fed by right-wing outrage chaos merchants, by our corporate-controlled mainstream media, by social media constantly. It's all about what divides us. It's not about what makes our lives better. What the president's talking about, and again, I go back to his State of the Union address, it's what makes our lives better. How are we going to make family life better? How are we going to help people how are we going to help them get ahead? That's the question. How are we going to rebuild the American dream? That's the question. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Take the program on the go wherever you go, wherever you get your podcast, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, and everywhere in between. Make sure you grab it. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day British socialist illustrator Walter Crane died. You have probably seen his Art Nouveau style illustrations. Many celebrate International May Day, memorialize the Haymarket Martyrs of Chicago, or commemorate the Paris Commune. He also published a series of illustrations titled Cartoons for the Cause. That series was produced to commemorate the International Socialist Trade Union Congress of 1896. Born in 1845, Crane apprenticed with the Chartist radical radical William James Linton. He started his career illustrating children's books, nursery rhymes, and fairy tales. He later traveled to Italy with his wife Mary to continue with book illustrations and portraiture. Upon his return to Britain, he became friends with artist William Morris, whose pamphlet, Art and Socialism, deeply impacted him. Crane soon joined the Art Workers Guild and the Arts and Crafts Society. Together, he and Morris joined the Social Democratic Federation. Crane produced illustrations for its journal, Justice. From there, he helped to found the Socialist League and illustrated its journal, the Commonwealth. When the League failed to gain popularity, he moved on to the Fabian Society, whose members included George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, and Sidney and Beatrice Webb. Crane produced wildly popular images like the Angel of Freedom and published the Claims of Decorative Art. In it, he asserted art could not flourish in a world where wealth was so unfairly distributed. Only under socialism could use and beauty be united. He continued to publish and became principal of the Royal College of Arts in 1898. A strong critic of the British Empire, Crane supported the Labour Party and produced posters each year to celebrate May Day. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
In corporate speak, there are no, quote, job cuts. Instead, firings are blandly referred to as employment adjustments. Now, though, corporate wordsmiths will need a whole new thesaurus of euphemisms, for masses of job cuts are coming for employees in the higher echelons of the corporate structure. Don't look now, but an unanticipated result of the ongoing pandemic is that it has given cover for CEOs to speed up the adoption of highly advanced RPAs, robotic process automation, to replace employees once assumed to be immune from displacement. As one analyst told a New York Times reporter, with RPA, you can build a bot that costs $10,000 a year and take out 2 to 4 humans. Prior to the COVID crisis, many top executives feared a public backlash if they pushed automation too far too fast. But ironically, the economic collapse caused by the pandemic has so discombobulated the workplace and diverted public attention that corporate bosses have been emboldened to rush ahead. While the nationwide shutdown of offices and furloughing of employees has caused misery for millions, one happy purveyor of RPA systems notes that it has, quote, massively raised awareness among executives about the variety of work that no longer requires human involvement. He cheerfully declares, we think any business process can be automated, advising corporate bosses that half to 2/3 of all the tasks being done at their companies can be done by machines. This is Jim Hightower saying, conventional corporate wisdom blithely preaches that all new technologies create more jobs than they kill. But even these Pollyannish preachers are now conceding that this robotic automation of white-collar jobs is being imposed so widely, suddenly, and stealthily that losses will crush any gains.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we live in a world right now where every time you turn around, someone's tracking your movements, someone's following you with a camera. Every time, playing games with the kids, they're even recording our every movement. We're almost programmed to where every second of our day is being either filmed or documented in one way or another. And the question becomes, what happened to privacy? What happened to, those intimate moments? And what happened to our information, our data, our papers, our privacy in our papers? What happened to our rights? And what happens when corporate America gets a hold of it? And what happens when our government gets a hold of it? That is the question. And here to share some thoughts on all of those questions and maybe how we deal with it and how we take some control over it. I've asked Thom Hartmann to come talk with us. Thom is a talk radio host, the king of progressive media, also the host, also the author of the latest book, The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threatens Us and Our Democracy. Thom, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great being back with you. Thank you for inviting me.
So, we live in this time. I mean, like my kids, they don't know anything other than being, surveilled, watched by cameras, recorded, constantly under, the laptops they get from school are watching them or recording them. They don't know any better. You and I, we expect privacy. Sadly, they don't.
Yeah, it's amazing the changes that have happened just in the last 20 years, or 25 years, I guess, at the most. There's this doctrine that goes back to the 11th century England, the castle doctrine. A man's home is his castle, but there's a certain responsibility associated with that. If you, Rick, put a sign out in front of your house tonight saying, big party at midnight, come on in, door is open, and just let any old skeezy person come in and do whatever they wanted, and you ended up with somebody in the back room shooting up heroin and somebody in the other room raping somebody and somebody in the kitchen showing, child pornography or something. If the cops busted in, they wouldn't just arrest all those bad guys. They'd arrest you because you let it happen in your house.
Right.
It's the flip side. It's your castle, but you're also responsible for it. That has been the law of the United States, the English-speaking world, literally since the 1100s. And in 1996, in their brilliant wisdom, Congress passed a law called the Telecommunications Act of 1996, Section 230, that says that's true. If a business invites people in and they're committing crimes and the business knows about it, they can go to jail. If you invite people into your home and they commit crimes and you know about it, you can go to jail. But if you build a house on the internet and people come in there and they're buying and selling people and they're selling weapons and they're organizing terrorist attacks, you have no responsibility whatsoever. And that was, the beginning of Mark Zuckerberg becoming one of the richest men on earth.
And one of the most powerful
our kids
people.
Don't remember a time before that when the internet was safe. I used to run forums on CompuServe from 1981 to 1996. They paid us to do that to make sure that kind of stuff didn't happen. But boy, when this got decriminalized, it was off to the races.
So now that the genie's out of the bottle, is there a way to shove it back in?
Yeah, we could fix Section 230. And by the way, this isn't just some old liberal saying this. The other guy who wrote a book about this, which is actually a pretty good book, although the last half of it is about how liberals want to destroy the world, is Josh Hawley, the guy the senator from Missouri who wants to be president. There is a bipartisan concern about just reasonable limits. The other thing is, when Donald Trump became president, he put Ajit Pai, a guy who is a lawyer for Verizon, in charge of the FCC. Now, again, since the 1920s, if the police or the guy down the street or your phone company want to listen to your phone conversation, they have to have a warrant signed by the judge per the Fourth Amendment. And that was true of the internet up until about 3 years ago. And then Ajit Pai came, and nobody could read what you were doing. Your internet service provider couldn't read what you were doing. It was covered by what's called Title II of the Telecommunications Act. Ajit Pai blew that up. So now your internet service provider brings the service into your home and your children's home, brings your children's service in, can literally watch everything you are doing, every single keystroke, every page you visit, whether you slow down for a particular picture or you linger on a particular ad. They can read all your email inbound, all your email outbound, everything you do, and they can record it and they can sell it. And, again, this is something that literally no other fully democratic country in the world will tolerate. And for some reason here in America, we're just taking it.
No, and not just taking it, we're selling it. I mean, this is for profit is what it is.
Making a lot of money on it.
They're making a ton of money on it. And it's, and again, we were arguing about this before Pi did it back then. And, I was fighting against it then because, then it was about the children, because clearly did not want my kids being targeted as they are right now, because these social media apps are doing just that. First, it's the kids, and now you've got them used to being targeted and their information being out there. This is a huge problem.
It really is. It really is. And it's the result of, big tech throwing around big money in Washington, D.C., because 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court said that they didn't think that they didn't think political bribery was a thing anymore. It's now called free speech. And no matter how much money billionaires throw into the pockets of politicians or big corporations for that matter, because they also said, hey, corporations are people, my friend. that now it's possible to buy politicians, and thus you get these outrages like Section 230 and the end of net neutrality.
And now what you end up having also is, the fact that you've brainwashed an entire generation by feeding them the outrage candy that they've so desperately wanted from 2016 forward. Every time, I have friends who, they're addicted to Facebook, they're addicted to Instagram, and they're constantly fed, their specific slice of insanity, whatever that is. And their biases are confirmed at every moment of every day by the most vile, outrageous stuff possible. And you wonder why we're in the position we are politically.
Yeah, in the book, I draw an analogy to that. I was in South America a couple of decades ago, hanging out with some shamans down in Peru, and they gave me some coca leaf to chew on. And, it was like a weak cup of coffee. It was just a really mild buzz. In the Middle East, I've smoked opium, same deal. It's not as strong as, your weakest prescription painkiller. But if you take opium or if you take cocaine and you distill it down to its finest essence, you got crack and you got heroin, and it will destroy your friggin' life. That's what these algorithms do. They are taking our human interactions, our anger, our fears, our hopes, our loves, all of our emotions, and distilling them down into the purest essence they possibly can, and mainlining it right through our eyeballs into our nervous system. And like you said, Rick, it's addictive, just like all those drugs would be. And it's frankly insane that we allow this to happen, and we allow these companies to maintain these algorithms as trade secrets.
And the thing is the most vile part of it is it's all for profit. It all comes back to keeping your eyeballs on that screen, getting addicted to that notification that you run to the screen so that they can make profit off of you going back over and over and over again. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about family values. They don't care about anything other than the bottom line, which is cash in their pockets.
That's right, and how much of it they can keep, recycle to politicians on their side. But I think people are waking up. Europe has woken up. They passed a internet privacy law. Not only can your internet service providers not snoop on you in Europe, they would go to jail, and the police. But also, and not only have they done, thus bringing back net neutrality, and not only have they largely blown up Section 230 or their equivalent of it, but they've also come up with this thing called the right to be forgotten. If you can now, if you're a European citizen, you can send a note to any of the search engine companies and say, this particular link that comes up when my name gets searched, I don't want that link to be in your search results anymore, and they have to take it out. And that came out of a lawsuit back about 10 years ago from a Spanish guy who had a very, very low internet profile, and discovered when he Googled himself that the only thing on the internet about him was a 1998 bankruptcy that he'd had. And it was like, he didn't realize that employers and landlords, he couldn't figure out why he was being treated so badly. They were Googling him and figuring he was a deadbeat. So he sued. Google laughed at him. The EU got behind him, and now they got a law.
Yeah, see, now I think that's something Rick Santorum could probably get behind. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Thom Hartmann. Thom's a progressive radio host, the king of progressive media, also the author of the book, The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threatens Us and Our Democracy. So how do we fight back? I mean, most of us think, hey, you can't fight City Hall, these big corporations, these huge tech companies have so much money, so much power and influence. They're spending, millions of dollars on lobbyists. What does a little guy like me, what's a little guy like our listeners do?
Well, at the largest and most structural level, we all need to be lobbying aggressively and working with politicians who support breaking up monopolies. It's not only insane, it's against the law. A law that was signed in 1891. It's against the law for one company to own 90% of an industry, like Google does with search engines, for example, or Facebook with social media. So number one, which is not 90%, but it's huge. So number one, break up the monopolies. Number two, undo Donald Trump's destruction of net neutrality and bring the internet back under Title II of the Telecommunications Act. So if somebody wants to spy on you, they have to get a warrant. Number three, undo or rewrite Section 230 of the Telecom Act of 96 so that social media companies are actually have some responsibility. It need not be draconian, but they have some responsibility for what goes on in the houses that they've built on the internet. And number four, we need to, and this is one of the main things I try to do with the book, is inform people about all the ways that you're being spied on. I mean, from your smart car to your thermostat to your refrigerator. I mean, smart beds now, they're sending the information back to the mothership about when you go to bed, when you wake up, how well you sleep, so that they can sell that information to somebody who might want to sell you a sleep remedy or a CPAP machine or something. I mean, there's the thermostat companies have the ability to sell information to, oh, look at this, somebody's varying their temperature a lot. Must be some woman going through menopause or somebody having cancer therapy. And the doorbell companies now, you can't get a smart doorbell without being tied into somebody's server. So they know everybody who comes into your house, when you leave, when you're gone, whether you had a party or not, everything. And I mean, and now they're hooking them up with police departments around the country. So it's like, it's time to wake the hell up.
Yeah, no, I have friends who have the Alexa and the, all those things, the little assistants, which I refuse to get. I'm sure it's on my phone and I'm sure it's still, possibly gotten, but, they say, hey, I've been talking about this, and all of a sudden, all of my ads start popping up as this. It's almost that you can't get away from it. I mean, right. It's creeped into our lives in such a way, Thom, that you almost can't get away from it.
These guys are really good at what they do, and they've had 20 years or more to fine tune their skill, and with no oversight, no controls, no regulations. What's really nuts, Rick, is if somebody said the NFL should just scrap the rule book. A team wants to have 12 men on the field, no problem. As long as they grease the skids of the commissioners. People are like, no, there need to be rules. You can't have a game without rules. Well, the economy is that way. The politics is that way. The internet is that way. We need some friggin' rules.
There you go. Good stuff, Thom. I appreciate the time. I hope folks will check out the book, The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. We'll get links out on social media how you can check it out. Written by Thom Hartmann. Good stuff, Thom. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick. It's always great talking to you.
Good stuff. I appreciate the time. Love to hear your thoughts. You can give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Make sure you check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you grab it from there. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Enough to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day that participants in the famed Bread and Roses strike gathered in Lawrence, Massachusetts to celebrate their victory. The strike had begun in January and was a hard-fought battle. More than 20,000 textile workers, most of them women, speaking more than 20 languages, participated in the action. It was a powerful stand of workers' solidarity across ethnic lines. On March 12th, the American Woolen Company agreed to most of the strikers' demands. In the days that followed, other companies also agreed to terms. The workers gained between 5 and 25% raises depending on their jobs. They also gained overtime pay. The ripples of this impact flowed throughout New England. It's estimated that 150,000 textile workers saw raises in the aftermath of the historic work action. At the gathering to commemorate the strike, leader of the industrial workers of the world, Big Bill Haywood, addressed the crowd saying, "You are the heart and soul of the working class. You, the strikers of Lawrence, have won the most signal victory of any organized body of working men in the world. You have demonstrated that there is a common interest in the working class that can bring all its members together." Despite the significance of this strike, the story is not taught in many of our schools. In 2011, the Zinn Education Project found that only 2 of the 10 major U.S. history textbooks discussed the strike. Today, let's take a minute to remember those brave women who declared, yes, it's bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So, according to Talking Points, sent to Russian media, evidently the Kremlin wants Fox News' Tucker Carlson everywhere. They want Tucker. That's right, because evidently, quote, he sharply criticizes the actions of the United States and NATO, their negative role in unleashing the conflict in Ukraine, and the defiantly provocative behavior from the leaders of the Western countries and NATO toward the Russian Federation and towards President Putin personally. So this is coming from them, man. They want their Tucker. They want Tucker. Yes. So they want some Tucker. And why not? Because hey, he's carrying their water for them. You just gotta go there. Speaking of carrying some water, Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, she evidently told the Washington Free Beacon that she's all in favor of she was all at the Stop the Steal rally. But got cold and left early. Now understand, she was all in favor of it. She did a whole bunch of planning for it. She's been on the far extreme right for ages. She's been doing crazy stuff for a while, on the payroll of a bunch of extreme groups. And I've been saying for years, I don't know how she can get away with this and end up having him on the Supreme Court. But nobody pays attention. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we today?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
I am fabulous. What's on your mind?
Okay. You were talking at the beginning of the show about the radical right wing. I have been screaming about these people for years. And I've been told that, because I'm not a Christian, that I'm overreacting, and I kind of feel vindicated.
No, these people are lunatics.
They are. I mean, it is just, I do not understand how or why they're getting away with the stuff that they're getting away with, because if it was anyone else, we'd all been hauled off somewhere, Guantanamo Bay or something for being terrorists. But it's outrageous, just like that Ginny Thomas. How is she getting away with this? I can guarantee you, if this would have been one of the liberal judges' spouse, there would have been screaming coming from the entire Republican Congress.
And the thing is the amazing part of this is the right gets away with this kind of stuff because the left just goes, well, that's just who they are. We expect horrible from them. And allow it to go away, and have been allowing it for far too long, and this is the moment of frustration that we're in. I look at the abortion issue. For the longest time, Republicans are going to do this. You expect it from them. The reality is now they're the dog catching the car, and not only have they caught the car, now they're biting the tires off. Now they're biting the fender off the car. They're literally chewing the car to pieces. They know what to do with it. They're criminalizing women having the ability to determine their future. They are going to put women back 50 to 100 years.
Oh, I know. I was 13 years old when Roe was passed. And even at 13 years of age, I would get into it with my mother, who was a diehard Baptist. But I'll tell you what, people better wake up, or we're going to find ourselves back in the Middle Ages, and it's not going to be a fun time.
No, because it's not just about Roe. It's about Griswold as well. It's about contraception. It's about, eventually it's about working. It's about, as I've been saying for years, it's about putting women barefoot and pregnant back in the kitchen, gays back in the closet, and blacks back in the field, which is the original intent. They have told us for years they believe in the original intent of the Constitution.
Oh, I totally agree with you, and I've said the same thing. That was the entire game plan. Original intent, well, we had slavery originally. Tisk, 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 got to put it back in there. And I'm telling you what, we're going to have slaves, women will have no rights, and we're probably going to have poorhouses instead of unions, and they're going to send everybody there, and the companies will just buy the poorhouse.
Amen.
And that way they don't have to pay wages.
I'm with you.
But you have a good evening, Rick.
Appreciate the thoughts, Alice. Thanks so much. And this is the scary part: the world that we're heading towards. And I hate to be this negative, but the world that we're heading, the Republican worldview, is if you don't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even if you don't have bootstraps, then it's shame on you. You're on your own, brother. You think about the Dickinsonian world. If there's not a profit to be made, you will starve. If there's not a profit to be made, you will starve. You stop and think about all the inflation talk that's going on right now. All the people going, oh my gosh, inflation's going through the roof. You know why inflation's going through the roof? Opportunism. Good old-fashioned American greed. We've got supply chain issues. Yeah, we've got supply chain issues. We've got cost issues. Yeah. But CEOs, they're lining their pockets, man. They're using the pandemic for every bit that it's worth. Because across the board, you look at industry after industry, costs are going up. But you know what else are going up? Profit margins. And you go, how is it possible? Look, I understand. If your costs are going up, I get it. Costs are going up. You got to raise your prices. I get it. But when your profit margins are going up, that just tells me you're just being greedy. You're taking advantage of the moment. And this is where, I had a listener on our weekend show call in and say, you know what should happen? We should just stop buying stuff. Just don't buy it anymore. Find other ways of dealing. For the short term, say, nope, not doing it. Cost too much. When the prices come down, then we'll talk. Start holding these CEOs accountable. Start forcing their hands. Because for far too long, they've been able to pull this game. And we just grin and bear it. We just end up taking it, and it's the people who can afford it the least who get hammered the most. The working poor. The working class of this country gets screwed all of the time. Because the wealthy know, what choice do they have? They got to show up to those crummy jobs, so we're going to hit them with high oil prices. And I said from the beginning, what Biden should have done, said, yep, we're going to ban Russian oil. And in this moment, we're going to eliminate all gas taxes, and to offset the cost of the gas taxes, we're going to raise an emergency tax on all oil profits. That's what we should be doing, because we should be helping the working poor to get to work every day. You help the people at the bottom. That's why I love what Biden said in the State of the Union address, but he's got to follow through with it on policy. It's bottom up, middle out, not top down. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, just tuning in, make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a minute of the program. You can grab that at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, from Podbean to Stitcher, everywhere in between. Always there. Weekly, we do a special interview. I'll make sure you check that out. Quick break. Right back.
Today, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy.
Biden bans Russian fossil fuel imports.
It's hard, bloody hard, but it's possible.
Europe rapidly overhauls its energy security strategy. Plus, global carbon emissions reach new all-time high.
From bad to worse, all of those stories straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.
Take that, Vlad. America doesn't need your klepto crude. America is perfectly happy to stay home and frack ourselves blind.
Ain't it the truth? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the beat that you have been on for 13 years now appears to be right at the very center of geopolitics and perhaps even World War III.
Unfortunately, it may be. President Biden's announcement this week to immediately ban imports of Russian fossil fuels in order to stop indirectly funding Russia's war on Ukraine could also mark an inflection point in history. Biden warned that the ban will likely increase prices on American consumers, and he dismissed the U.S. oil industry's opportunistic push to weaken environmental regulations as a false choice.
Nice try, Big Oil.
He said the only long-term solution is for the U.S. to double down on mobilizing clean energy to accelerate the shift away from polluting fossil fuels as a matter of energy security and to end once and for all the power of dictators to use energy as an economic weapon anywhere.
Yep.
Transforming our economy to run on electric vehicles powered by clean energy with tax credits to help American families winterize their homes and use less energy. That will help. That'll mean tyrants like Putin won't be able to use fossil fuels as weapons against other nations. And it will make America a world leader, manufacturing and exporting clean energy technologies of the future to countries all around the world. This is the goal we should be racing toward.
He's right.
A new Wall Street Journal poll finds nearly 80% of Americans of all political stripes support banning Russian fossil fuel imports, even if it raises gas prices further.
Wow, someone ought to tell Fox News.
But Biden also warned oil companies against using the war in Ukraine as cover to raise prices to maximize their profits.
Good luck.
Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren on MSNBC on Wednesday said she is introducing a windfall profits tax to block the industry from war profiteering.
I'm co-sponsoring with Senator Whitehouse and others a bill on windfall profits tax. Look, we get it, supply and demand, that prices go up, but profit margins should not go up. That's just oil companies gouging.
How unlike them?
After Biden announced the ban, the UK also moved to phase out Russian fossil fuel imports by the end of this year in order to give businesses time to replace Russian imports. And the European Union, which is heavily dependent on Russian oil and gas, unveiled new plans this week to overhaul its own energy security strategy. On top of a rapid brake that would cut imports of Russian gas by 2/3 by the end of this year, the EU has also unveiled a long-term strategy to speed up their planned transition away from fossil fuels, ending all dependence on all fossil fuels, quote, well before 2030.
And not a moment too soon.
Their strategy includes fast-tracking permitting for wind, solar, and renewable hydrogen projects, revisiting decisions to phase out nuclear energy, and doubling the rate of conversions from gas-fired boilers to electric heat pumps to permanently cut natural gas demand. Ironically, it took just 13 days after Russia's invasion to push Europe to accelerate its clean energy transition.
After you have been spending 13 years trying to get them to do so.
The Washington Post reports that White House aides are in early discussions over a Heat Pumps for Europe program that would mobilize U.S. manufacturers under the Defense Production Act to send massive numbers of energy-efficient electric heat pumps to Europe and create a supply chain for America, too. National security experts say that if the world wasn't still so dependent on oil, Putin would have been much weaker and likely unable to wage war. Ironically, his war may end up accelerating the global shift away from fossil fuels.
So, There's something good.
And it all matters for climate, too. According to new data released by the International Energy Agency this week, the world's energy-related CO2 emissions reached an all-time high in 2021.
An all-time high?
Yes.
We are going in the wrong direction. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, we heard a lot about the Great Resignation. And in fact, we talked about the Pew Research study that just came out that said, like 56% of people left jobs because of crappy wages. People left because of disrespect, poor working conditions, all the things we've been saying for years. The reason why people were unhappy with the jobs that they had, but sadly stayed because, they needed to work. Only now after the pandemic, people have realized, hey, I've got options, or it just isn't worth it anymore. So we've seen people say, go in different routes. Life's too short, whatever the reasons are, they've gone. And as the Pew Research study showed, for better outcomes. Most people got better wages. Most people got better family balance situations, better advancements, better opportunities, better treatment, better options. When you have a much more competitive work environment, when you have a more competitive job market, you have better outcomes for workers and, I would argue, employers as well. I think the system works better that way. And I think when you have a better compensated workforce, you have a more loyal workforce. At least that's my belief. But here to share some thoughts on if my belief is correct and to share some of his experience in this, I've asked John Schall to come talk with us. He's the owner of El Jefe's Taqueria. They own restaurants in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. He is part of the folks with Business for a Minimum Wage. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Business for a fair minimum wage, right?
That's what I was looking for. I was looking for the fair part of it. So John, we hear this a lot. We hear it's impossible to find people who want to work. I'm sure you've heard all these frames. Nobody wants to work. Everyone's lazy. No one in your industry is ever going to find anybody. It's impossible. Because nobody wants to do it. Yet I understand you're actually growing. You've been growing, and you're doing well.
We've actually, when the pandemic started in August of 2019, in August of 2020, there were there were 2 El Jefes, and now there are 7. And the 8th is under construction. I've opened 5 restaurants in the last 18 months. And like I said, we'll open a 6th in Pittsburgh in June. So, we've added, 200 workers to our workforce in the last 18 months.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
And how did you do that? Because everybody else is saying, I can't find anybody. There's nobody wants to work. How'd you do it?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is when you pay living wages as opposed to just minimum wages, it makes a world of difference in a whole bunch of different ways. It reduces employee turnover. And you also create a whole series of a system of sort of internal networks that allow you to find employees. When you treat employees well, when you pay employees fairly, when you give employees sick time and vacation time, when you give them respect, that word goes out. And when we opened a new restaurant in Boston, we don't advertise on our Indeed or Monster, or we just advertise among our existing employees, and it's their cousins and friends and neighbors and aunts and uncles that have come to work in the next restaurant that we've opened. So, I mean, it's not unconnected to treating people fairly, treating them sort of respectfully in the workplace, paying them a living wage, and giving them benefits that allow them to have a real life.
Yeah, no, I mean, because look, the restaurant industry is famous for, for what is it, $2.93 an hour here in Pennsylvania is the tipped minimum wage, and then you're on your own, brother, for the rest of that. So, what is a living wage in the world of business for a fair minimum wages world? What would be a fair minimum wage?
So in August, actually, Governor Wolf sort of launched his campaign for a $15 minimum wage in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is actually surrounded. Every state surrounding Pennsylvania has some version of a $15 minimum wage, except Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's is still I think it's still $7.50, $7.75. I'm not sure.
No, it's actually $7.15 is the state law. And it slaves off the $7.25 federal law.
Right.
Pennsylvania, the law is still $7.15. We're actually pulling West Virginia down. That's how bad things are.
Yes. Well, when Governor Wolf launched that campaign in August, Secretary Jennifer Berrier, the Pennsylvania Secretary for Labor and Industry, launched that campaign from the El Jefe's Taqueria in Bethlehem. It was interesting. One of my employees sort of spoke at that press conference, and he talked about sort of before the job he had before he was working at El Jefe's, where he was making minimum wage, and the difference it meant when he came to El Jefe's, and he could help his mom pay rent. Just what it meant about having vacations, what it meant about having sick time. It was just an incredibly inspiring sort of talk that he gave, or little sort of comments he gave during that press conference.
Right.
We're starting people in Pennsylvania at $13.50 an hour. And people on average get around $2.50 an hour in tips. That also goes into their checks. So people's sort of effective wage is around $16 an hour. And that's for the sort of the people that are just starting. People who have been here for 2 or 3 years are sort of making $17, $18 an hour plus the $2.50 an hour tip. So, is $36,000 a year? I mean, I still would like to sort of increase that, right? But we're doing everything we can in a competitive environment where lots of people aren't paying those kinds of wages, and It's one of the reasons I argue that people like the National Restaurant Association and the Pennsylvania, I'm drawing a blank on the Restaurants Association. It's the Restaurant and I think Hospitality Association should be supporting a $15 minimum wage in Pennsylvania, because it then gives everybody a level playing field.
Yeah, but the problem is they don't want that because they're the bottom dwellers. They don't want people like you because they're the bottom dwellers. That means more profit for them. But I'm
not. But I don't think that that's true. I don't think it means more profit for them. When I have people that are with me for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to having a continual, and I'm paying them $15, $16 an hour, as opposed to having a continual sort of turnover of people that you're paying $7.50 or $8 an hour to, because I will guarantee you that those guys I'm paying $15 an hour to that have been with me for 3 years are more than twice as productive behind the line when they're, wrapping burritos and making, quesadilla and than people that are brand new and are continually turning over and that they're sort of trained from scratch. And so, so it's not. I would argue, and I would argue strongly that paying living wage and reducing turnover among your staff and reducing, sort of continually sort of hiring and paying, the cost right now of hiring new people when you're going through Indeed or Monster or all of the other sort of hiring sort of sort of networks, apps now, is incredibly expensive. The third part that makes a difference when you keep employees, when you pay living wages and you keep employees working for you long term, is just customer service. Right? When customers are coming in and they're seeing the same faces that have been there year after year, it creates a sort of just a different kind of environment, and one that is way more enjoyable to be at than when every time you come in, somebody new is serving you, and you've got to sort of explain from scratch, sort of, exactly, how you like your burrito wrapped.
No, it's an excellent point. And like you said, the person's making it the same way, and you find something that you like, and they make it that same way. It's an excellent example. So I guess then, how do we take what you have learned and what you're doing and get that out to the rest of the business community so that this message gets out to more people, so that this becomes something that the business community then takes on? Or do you think maybe because of what's happened over the last several months that what you're doing will catch on?
Well, look, it's certainly it's one of the reasons that I've been part of Business for a Fair Minimum Wage for a whole bunch of years now. We started Business for a Fair Minimum Wage. I'm pretty sure that Massachusetts was the first campaign that was undertaken by Business for a Fair Minimum Wage, and we got the $15 minimum wage passed in Massachusetts 4 or 5 years ago. Now, once again, and remember, right, minimum wage in Massachusetts today, right now, is $14.75. Right, so when we passed it 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was $11 an hour, right? And it's increased every January 1st. It increases every year as a result of this, and we're finally now almost at $15 an hour. But the Business for a Fair Minimum Wage does a really great job of going into different industries and different companies and making the case that paying a fair minimum wage, a living minimum wage, is not just good for workers, but it's good for businesses as well. I don't know how else to sort of say, except it's part of a campaign, right? It's like any other political campaign. You have to sort of go out there. You have to beat the bushes. You have to keep talking about it. You have to sort of take every opportunity you can to sort of, like announce this to the world. why I wanted to come on your show tonight, Rick.
Yeah, it's the reason we wanted you to come on and talk about this. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with John Schall. John is the author, or is the owner of El Jefe's Taqueria. You can check out their website, eljefestaqueria.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out how his locations are in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Find one near you. You can check out that website as well. So I guess the last line of questioning I've got for you, in looking at this, because I would like to see a more worker-centric kind of push, because I do think that by focusing on making better conditions for workers, that it is owner-friendly, it is business-friendly, because you do have that stability, you do have that loyalty, that dedication that past generations had, that seems to have been lost. I mean, 40 years of the gold watch have been long gone for a long time, and I know a lot of people might want to see that come back.
Yeah, no. It's absolutely the case. I don't have a big sort of like corporate overhead in my company. It's myself. I have a financial controller that's worked for me for 16 years. She was a manager of a restaurant for me in Tampa, Florida, 15 years ago, and she's been working for me ever since. And now she's my financial controller. I have two regional managers who have been working for me since they were in their late teens, and they're now in their mid-30s. And one's the regional manager for the 4 stores in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey market, and the other is the regional manager for the stores in the New England market. My Mexican-American chef, whose recipes sort of came from me, has been working for me for 16 years. I have a set of Dominican twins who have been working with me since 1997. They were like boys when they started, and now they're sort of, like in their mid-40s. And having that kind of stability in, and this is the group of people that runs my company. I'm sort of a figurehead, but these are the guys that really sort of do the day-to-day work. And it's because they've been with me a long time, and because, they know how to run these restaurants better than I do at this point. And having that sort of treating people well, having them stay with you, having that kind of sort of longevity just makes it possible. And it's why we were able to grow. If Andreas, my Pennsylvania, New Jersey regional manager, wouldn't have sort of left Massachusetts and moved to Bethlehem when we opened that store in 2018, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And then we expanded 3 more restaurants in that area from there. And so, our growth, as sort of remarkable as it is, sort of in that it occurred in the middle of a pandemic, was the function of the fact that we really had a long-term dedicated staff who had been treated well, been treated fairly, but made part of ownership of the company, and were able to help us sort of succeed over the last 2 years in a way that ends up being pretty remarkable.
Yeah, outstanding stuff. I know my wife's looking forward to trying your place out there in Bethlehem. We're gonna make a trek there one day. I know that's happening. But John, I appreciate
that's great, Rick.
I appreciate you coming on, sharing your thoughts. I wish you the best. Good on you, and thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks so much, John Schall. Make sure you check out the website, eljefestaqueria.com. And if you're in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, or New Jersey, make sure you check out the work that they do and the fantastic food. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean to Stitcher, and everywhere in between. Never miss a beat, a minute of the program. Also love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Right back after this. you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Maserati Manchin. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. We'll call him Maserati Manchin. You know the guy drives around in a Maserati? Lives in freaking West Virginia, one of the poorest states in the country. The guy who said, no. We can't possibly give $250 per kid to make sure that we cut childhood poverty. No, can't do that. They'll just waste it on drugs and booze. Yeah, that's Maserati Manchin. Evidently, Maserati Manchin's against the idea of electric vehicles. He said, I'm very reluctant to go down the path of electric vehicles. He said, I'm old enough to remember standing in line in 1974 trying to buy gas. I remember those days. I don't want to have to be standing in line waiting for a battery for my vehicle because we're dependent on a foreign supply chain, mostly China. Does he think that these cars are run on like D batteries? That he's going to have to, wait in line at the grocery store to buy, some batteries? I mean, is this what he thinks? You think the Energizer Bunny's going to come and bring him a battery? That's not the kind of batteries. In fact, batteries we're building here. We're making the batteries here. That's what we're doing. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. We know where he's bought and paid for. And that's the problem. The lobby money that we talked about earlier, the billions of dollars, we know where a lot of it is going. And here's my problem with this. We could be moving away from a lot of this problem. But it's folks like Manchin who are holding us up. You go, do electric vehicles have problems? Yeah, we got some problems. But we should be moving to alternative fuels. We should be moving in a different direction quickly. Because as I said earlier, the fact that we're talking about the tar sands oil as the thing that was going to supposedly, maybe, possibly save us, the nastiest, dirtiest crap on the planet, that's it? We're literally scraping the bottom of the barrel? That should be telling us something. Now, the China part, again, this is where I keep coming back to this moment where you go, hey, the China part, we should be doing something about. We should be, without question, rebuilding our manufacturing capacity. We should be rebuilding that manufacturing prowess, that ability to ensure that what we need, we create. If this pandemic showed us anything, it's that we should be able to make what we need. It's that simple. We should be able to build the stuff that we need. We should be able to manufacture it right here at home. That's simple. And what's frustrating is Manchin's part of the problem for our foreign supply chain. All of these free trade agreements that we've had over the years, all of the push to get this stuff, part of it's Manchin. It's that simple. Got to take a quick break right here. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, share some of your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. On the other side, Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Also, your thoughts. Right back after this. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day that participants in the famed Bread and Roses strike gathered in Lawrence, Massachusetts to celebrate their victory. The strike had begun in January and was a hard-fought battle. More than 20,000 textile workers, most of them women, speaking more than 20 languages, participated in the action. It was a powerful stand of workers' solidarity across ethnic lines. On March 12th, the American Woolen Company agreed to most of the strikers' demands. In the days that followed, other companies also agreed to terms. The workers gained between 5 and 25% raises depending on their jobs. They also gained overtime pay. The ripples of this impact flowed throughout New England. It's estimated that 150,000 textile workers saw raises in the aftermath of the historic work action. At the gathering to commemorate the strike, leader of the industrial workers of the world, Big Bill Haywood, addressed the crowd saying, "You are the heart and soul of the working class. You, the strikers of Lawrence, have won the most signal victory of any organized body of working men in the world. You have demonstrated that there is a common interest in the working class that can bring all its members together." Despite the significance of this strike, the story is not taught in many of our schools. In 2011, the Zinn Education Project found that only 2 of the 10 major U.S. history textbooks discussed the strike. Today, let's take a minute to remember those brave women who declared, "Yes, it's bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
In corporate speak, there are no, quote, job cuts. Instead, firings are blandly referred to as employment adjustments. Now, though, corporate wordsmiths will need a whole new thesaurus of euphemisms, for masses of job cuts are coming for employees in the higher echelons of the corporate structure. Don't look now, but an unanticipated result of the ongoing pandemic is that it has given cover for CEOs to speed up the adoption of highly advanced RPAs, robotic process automation, to replace employees once assumed to be immune from displacement. As one analyst told a New York Times reporter, with RPA, you can build a bot that costs $10,000 a year and take out 2 to 4 humans. Prior to the COVID crisis, many top executives feared a public backlash if they pushed automation too far too fast. But ironically, the economic collapse caused by the pandemic has so discombobulated the workplace and diverted public attention that corporate bosses have been emboldened to rush ahead. While the nationwide shutdown of offices and furloughing of employees has caused misery for millions, one happy purveyor of RPA systems notes that it has, quote, massively raised awareness among executives about the variety of work that no longer requires human involvement. He cheerfully declares, "We think any business process can be automated," advising corporate bosses that half to 2/3 of all the tasks being done at their companies can be done by machines. This is Jim Hightower saying, conventional corporate wisdom blithely preaches that all new technologies create more jobs than they kill. But even these Pollyannish preachers are now conceding that this robotic automation of white-collar jobs is being imposed so widely, suddenly, and stealthily that losses will crush any gains.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So Kathleen Kane, evidently back in trouble. Remember Kathleen Kane, former attorney general here in Pennsylvania? Well, she's got herself back in a little bit of a ringer. Remember, she was convicted of perjury, obstruction of justice, a bunch of other illegal activities while she was Attorney General. Did a little time in jail. Now drunk driving. Add that to the list of things. Before we get to Bob, let's quick go to the phones and see what George from Florida's got on his mind. George, how are you today?
Hello, I'm doing all right. Rick, you're like the typical union man. You're fat, late.
George had a thought on his mind, and sadly, not too bright. And you would think he would be smart enough to go, oh, I got another idea. Mom, let me use the phone for a second. You know, George, I'm going to call your mother, and I'm going to tell her, lock the basement door next time. Don't let you use the phone. No more phone privileges for you. You're up past your bedtime. I'm going to tell. Let's move on. Let's find out what's going on around the world and around the rest of you get that. Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
So, that you get to follow that.
Well, I used to do my own show for 3 hours a day, right? And like you, I would take calls, and some of them were dandies.
Yeah, I mean, when you do it at night, sometimes you get the bottom of the barrel. Right. Sometimes you get great people. Sometimes you get
9 beers in.
or you get George, 1 beer in, lightweight, mom let him out of the basement. He's abusing his phone privilege. I'm telling George, you're in trouble. What do you think of the story coming out of Russia right now that China may actually be willing to give them some money?
Well, of course, I was just telling somebody today in Tennessee when they asked me, and I was on their show, and they asked for the reaction. Of course, there was denial, and I said, that the Chinese foreign minister is lying when his lips move. So, of course, Russia wants money. They want arms, which is very interesting because if they do want arms, that says a couple of things. They want, their military refurbished. That says a couple of things. One, I think, Rick, it says that they, obviously didn't do this in a day like they thought they were going to do, and they're planning, to exhaust more of the shelling and military equipment, et cetera. That's one. Two, they may intend to stay if they take over, because I think if Russia takes over and puts in a puppet government and then they leave, that government will last 2.5 minutes. And or possibly 3, they have another conquest in mind. So, they're trying to get refurbished, and I think that this is a great time to have people, not just the United States, obviously, but this community effort to go after China while we're at it, at the UN and whatever else countries can do together to pressure China.
No, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done in this moment, and
Sure.
Especially when you're looking at Russia in the moment that they're in. There's talk that they're going to default by the end of the week. They're financially hurting. And there's stories, economically they're going to be back 30 years. This not going the way they planned.
And usually, people will say, well, if there are, and it's starting a little bit. Well, if there's sanctions, it's going to hurt the Russian people. But right now, a vast majority of Russian people are supporting Putin. So I think that they're going to have to be hit, where it hurts. And it's the only way clear for, them to see that, this isn't a good thing that he's doing. Now, of course, when that happens, we have to brace ourselves. With the public, it's like, okay, go get him. Come on, Mr. President, do this and do that. And then all of a sudden, when there's some pain over it, then the public says, well, wait a minute, I didn't think that would, happen to us. So along with this, it's like a game of who can hold out longer.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting situation to be in.
Sure.
And I'm look, you look at the stories coming out of Ukraine, and it's just heartbreaking.
Oh,
horrible. Every day, and it's worse every single day. And I don't know how Putin recovers from this, especially with the international community. I don't know how things go back anywhere to where they were.
I don't think he recovers from this because, look, in war there are always atrocities. We've done it ourselves. We have situations of friendly fire. We have a situation where somebody fired a missile and it ended up at a wedding reception. Those have happened. And again, it's not something that we or our allies intended. Putin doesn't care. It's like, okay, bomb the maternity ward, bomb the apartment buildings. He doesn't care. This isn't an bombing of the Ukraine military facilities and then oops, we got an apartment building. He's going in and they're doing whatever they can do, pulling people out of buildings, shooting them in the street. I mean, this is one of the most aggressive, horrific incidences that we have seen in modern times.
Now, what do you say to the former guy? He was on with that Janine Pirro, said that there's a lot of love behind Russian President Vladimir Putin's efforts to make his country larger. It's a lot of love. It's a lot of love there, Bob.
When he first said he was a genius and with this situation and so smart, if you wanted to say something to that effect, you would normally, a normal person would say, he's not crazy, which I still don't think he's crazy. I don't think he's a Kim Jong-un crazy.
Nope.
I think he's brutal, horrible, filthy, vile. I don't think he's crazy. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. So one Rick could say, well, okay, the guy is he's crafty and he's terrible, but he's smart. He's making these moves on purpose. What he wants to do, he's had a genius plan. You could say it that way. That's not the way Trump said it. Trump is admiring him.
Oh, there's no question. And you look at what Stephanie Grissom, his press secretary, said. There's almost like a worship going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really quite sickening.
Yes, I mean, and some of the Republicans have obviously tried to make it clear where they stand, and then some are trying to, some are trying to work around, quote, what he said. So Trump's rhetoric on Ukraine itself now, that has shifted on the Ukraine, about sympathy, et cetera. But what he says about Putin hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
Now, what about India? I mean, India is in an interesting situation. I know there was an accidental missile launch recently. I don't know how you accidentally launch a missile, but okay, there was an accidental. They apologized for it into Pakistan, but there's a I guess they're in a kind of a bind there with Russia and China, right?
Well, they are, and India has a fear because it's had skirmishes and arguments over a particular area called Ladakh. And India now has a fear that potentially the United States might get asked by China to do a few things to, favor China in that Ladakh area and support. In turn, China then won't sell military equipment, to Russia. And I mean, who knows? China might actually say, stay out of the Ladakh dispute to the United States. And if we would do that and not take a side, then who knows what China really would do? They might say that they're not going to sell to Russia, and of course they would sell to Russia somehow. But India is in a precarious situation because India has been relying, and frankly, the Indian people would choose to rely on the United States right now, any day, over Russia, because India is the world's largest democracy, and Indians, like Americans, and the country of India likes the United States. But over the years, India has come to rely on Russia to provide its military hardware, vast portion of it, because India constantly has the threat of China. And they had a 1961 or 2 border war when the Dalai Lama came with 50,000 people headed towards India. China, of course, contacted India and said, let him stay, don't let him in, because they wanted to either machine gun him down like they did people in the temples at the time in Tibet, or they wanted them to die out there. India refused to listen to China and let the Dalai Lama in, which is, number one hatred thing on China's list. They fear the guy so much. So there's a long history of animosity with China and India, and kind of, isn't it weird now? China's gravitating so close with Russia, but Russia's still selling equipment to India, and China doesn't have a good relationship with India. So this has got a lot of fingers out there that it's causing a lot of people a lot of problems.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Bob Ney, former Ohio Congressman, political analyst, getting some thoughts on the top stories of the day. If you're just now joining us, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your podcast, from iHeart to iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, everywhere in between. Also love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So, I was talking about, your former party, how crazy they have gotten on some of these cultural issues. Just to change topics real quick here, because, interesting, some of them still, on the side of Putin. That's kind of weird to me. The cultural stuff, even stranger when you look at the bounty hunter stuff coming out. Now, the thing in Texas where we're going to up that to it. Evidently, if you get an abortion, it's a death penalty for you. How could you imagine this going this far? In your mind, could you see your former party getting this extreme?
No, well, I should say yes, and in particular, some people would get this extreme. When I was in the Congress, we had a list of 50 of us. I know you're aware of that list because they were people that were moderate on a lot of issues, and in particular labor issues. It was kind of what we called the famous 50 squishes. La Tourette, Lo Biondo, I can go down that list of people. I was on it that would be moderates in certain areas. Now, and when it came to budgeting, I was a hawk. We went after balanced budgets, but we had a group of moderates. That moderate group has shrunk, tremendously has shrunk to the point where it's not recognizable at this point in time. So you're going to have the extremes out there, the Marjorie Taylor Greens and everybody else that's hanging around that wants to go beyond extreme into the crazy zone.
It's getting bad. This idea of Missouri is going to be chasing women across state lines. Texas has got the digging through women's garbage. It's really crazy.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think too the tending to go after the citizen vigilante when it comes to it.
Yeah.
Where you can report the neighbor, but Texas and Missouri are delivering a 1-2 punch is what they're doing. It's again the involvement of you can report your neighbor, you can be part of the whole process. I think that one itself is scary.
It's just insane, and all I see in the media, Bob, is that how far to the left and how woke Democrats are, and how nobody likes how extreme the Democratic policies are. I'm going, have you been paying attention to the state legislatures? Oh, it's crazy. Just crazy times. Lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on in Texas, since Texas seems to be a lot in the news, because you would think that with all of this extreme stuff going on in legislatures, people would be going, hey, the vote. I'm looking at Texas, 27,000 mail-in ballots about to be rejected. That, to me, as I said, earlier in the show, I said, the reason Trump and the Republicans are so upset about 2020 is I think they believe they did enough to rig the election to win by doing enough to, purge enough people off the voting rolls. You look at Georgia, there were a couple 100,000 people that they were able to purge well in advance of the election. so that they didn't even get to cast ballots, let alone have to worry about them. I'm looking at this. I'm going, this is the next purge.
Well, and this was interesting too, because 27,000 mail-in ballots from Texas were flagged. They were rejected. Okay, this makes it the highest amount if you look at previous elections of rejection. And this is why it's interesting too, is that when they're doing these rejected mail ballots, they aren't necessarily electronically sophisticated to say let's just go get the Democrat ballots. When they're looking at the number you have to match, which has to exactly match a number that's contained within the Board of Elections, for example. And that's like remembering, I don't know about you, but don't ask me to remember my password.
No.
I have to do the automatic, and if they say, well, Bob, what's your password to the Board of Elections? I don't know. I guess I won't be voting for a few years. So they're doing these ballot rejections, and I argue that when they're doing these, they're going to be hitting Republicans also in the whole process.
Yeah, but what they're planning on is Republicans aren't going to do mail-in ballots. They're believing that Republicans are going to show up at the polls because they believe, and they've been told that Democrats are going to be the ones who are going to use the mail-in ballots because it's what happened in 2020.
Right, but I still think at some point in time, as mail-in ballots become, more popular, et cetera, I still think they're going to, cut off a certain amount of Republicans. I mean, their strategy now is, it's the Democrats. They're too lazy to walk to the polls, so we're going to go get them. But I still think eventually some of this could potentially backfire on them. I really do.
Yeah, I agree, but they'll figure out another way to get around that down the road.
Another way to do it.
That's next election. We'll worry about that later.
But this will be an unprecedented amount of ballots rejected in recent elections in Texas.
And again,
it's sad.
Predictable. This was entirely predictable.
Right.
Just my thought. Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
My good friend Bob Ney. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Gonna take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. If you're just joining us, podcast, grab the podcast. Back after this. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. So there was an interesting story today. A Russian television employee went on the Russian-owned television station, Channel 1, and broke into the nightly news broadcast to protest the invasion into Ukraine, chanting "Stop the war, no to war." She signed the whole 9 yards. When I saw the video, my first thought was, what's going to happen to this woman? Is she going to disappear? What's going to happen to, is she going to end up being, gone? The woman recorded a video before her protest. She said, "I am now deeply ashamed. We silently watched this anti-human regime. We are Russian people, thinking the smart ones. Only we have the power to stop all of this craziness." Now, I am wondering what is going to happen to her. I am wondering if she is going to have to do one of those hostage video moments where they're going to, make her do a some kind of weird, I'm sorry, some kind of weird, I didn't mean to, some kind of weird thing. I wish the best for her. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Kurt on line 1. Kurt, how we doing today, buddy?
Pretty good. I got something good for you. I
Hit
got
me.
something really good for you, and I think you're going to sleep good tonight knowing this. I wasn't going to say nothing out loud, but I want to say it. So tonight, the group, Starfish Environmental Group, who does phone banking, we're phone banking in Utah for Evan McMullin in the Senate race against Mike Lee. And we typically don't phone bank for Republicans, but we're trying to help Evan McMullin to beat out Mike Lee, who is one of the 147 seditious, and he also voted to not send the funding to Ukraine. So we are doing everything we can. So when this came about the other day, I had your show was on, and we were on a Zoom, and you were talking about how the Democrats don't fight hard enough. And one of the girls in the group the next morning called, and she said, Kurt, we need to go fight like Democrats. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I hope we're not going to get out the gun. And she said, we need to start this is a good race to call against Mike Lee, who doesn't do good things. And, Evan McMullin, I think, would do a real good job in the Senate seat because there is no Democrat in that seat.
Right.
So.
No, I mean, this is one of those things. Look,
I
I keep saying, Republicans, take your party back somewhere to the sane line. At this point, give me a decent Republican to bring the party back to somewhere where it was, when it was, when my friend Bob Ney was in there. Look, I go back. I almost pine for the days of Newt Gingrich and the contract on America at this point, because at least they weren't siding with Russian propaganda. At least they weren't doing the things that we're seeing right now. As extreme as I thought they were then, at least they weren't doing the kind of things that we see today. Heaven forbid. I mean, it's just bring me some reasonable Republicans back.
Absolutely. So
Good
I
stuff,
thought you
Kurt.
might like that. So
Good stuff. Keep up the great work. You do awesome stuff.
Yes, I'm going to be phoning next week in Western Pennsylvania for Summer Lee. She'd be a really good candidate in the House. So I'm looking forward to that. So
Outstanding, Kurt. Good stuff, man. Appreciate the call.
All right.
As always, good stuff. Look, and this is one of those things. You have the ability to, Kurt's in Arizona. He makes calls into districts all across the country because this is what we need to be doing. This is what working people need to do. You got time, get on your phone, make a couple of phone calls, talk to people, talk to your friends, talk to neighbors. Preach, get out there and preach the good word. Talk about the issues that are important. Because again, as I started today off with, mainstream corporate-controlled media is trying to convince us that health care for kids, that child care, that, ending childhood poverty, that helping, affordable housing, that equality, that doing something with income inequality, that moving forward to help working families, somehow that stuff is extreme. Somehow that's too far left, that's too woke. But all of the stuff that we're seeing Republicans doing in state houses across this country, directly involved in people's most intimate decisions on whether they can or should have children, what they do with their children, somehow that's A-okay. Somehow that's not a problem. It's somehow religious. Very, very strange times. But we got a lot to get to. We got a lot to do. A lot to do, folks. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all of that. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks so much for tuning in.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.